Hello all, good morning. So after grading your exit slips, which by the way, some of you still need to turn in, I realize that we have a lot of confusion between coefficients and subscripts. So we're gonna slow this down just a little bit to make sure you do in fact understand. So what you'll see right here is I have written H2. H2 is one of our diatomic molecules, which means it exists in nature. If it's hydrogen floating around as a gas, it's not going to just float around as a hydrogen, it's going to float around as two hydrogens linked together. So you can see right here I have two hydrogens linked together. When you have these two hydrogens linked together, they form a molecule of H2. This is my subscript. I cannot change subscripts. Subscripts are absolutely what they are. You cannot change them. You cannot all of a sudden make this an H3 or an H4 or an H6. It is H2. That is the ingredient you have going into your equation. It is just H2. Now what I can do is change how many H2s I have going into or coming out of the equation. So you'll see down here below, I have two H2s. So there's one molecule of H2. There's another molecule of H2. So now I have two molecules of H2. We signify that with a coefficient, the number in the front. This is the number that you can play with in your chemical equations in order to balance. You may not change that number. That number has to stay the same. You do not get to add anything else to that number. It stays the same. This number right here is the one you can add more of. You have H2, it's an ingredient going into the recipe, or it's an ingredient coming out of the recipe. You have H2, you can add more of this ingredient, but you can't change the ingredients. All right, so let's go ahead and practice this first problem. You will find these problems that I'm going to do on the balancing equations problems on Schoology. So if you haven't pulled that up yet on your iPads, go ahead and pull it up. You'll find a Dropbox. There's 10 practice problems that everyone has to finish and complete today as part of their classwork. So here we go. I've got red M&Ms for hydrogen, blue M&Ms for oxygen, green M&Ms for chlorine, and orange M&Ms for nitrogen. I did not have an orange marker at home. Sorry. All right, so here we go. I have H2. So here is my H2 molecule. I have chlorine, also a molecule that exists as what we call a diatomic molecule. It has two of those. And this says I have HCl. So I have one hydrogen and one chlorine. Now, is this balanced? No. How many hydrogens do I have on this side? 1, 2. So I can write down here, I have 2 hydrogens. How many chlorines do I have on this side? I have 2. How many hydrogens and chlorines do I have on this side? I have, so I can write them down here. I have 1 hydrogen, 1 chlorine. Is it balanced? Absolutely not. So what can I do to get the left side of this equation, think of this like and equal marks, to the right side of the equation? What if I add another molecule of that? I've added another molecule. I cannot change the formula, but I can change how many of each thing that I have. So now I have H2 and a Cl2, 1, 2. So this is a 2, 1, 2. This becomes a 2. So I have put this in, and now I'm perfectly balanced. Remember, if there's nothing in the front, we assume it's a number 1. But as we talked about before, chemists are very lazy. We're not going to write the number 1. If nothing's there, you assume it's 1. I hope that helps with the first problem. So let's draw a line here and do our second problem. So our second problem on your sheet is H2 plus O2 yields or produces H2O. Is this balanced? Let's see. I have hydrogen, I have 2. Oxygen, I have 2. Hydrogen, I have 2. Oxygen, I have 1. Uh-oh, that is definitely not balanced. So let's put our molecules down. I have 2 hydrogen. I have 2 oxygen. And yet, I have H2O. Are they balanced? No. What is missing? I have 2 oxygen on this side, but only 1 oxygen on this side. So what can I do to balance it? Am I allowed just to add an oxygen there? Absolutely not. If I did that, H2O2, you've now changed that water to hydrogen peroxide. You drink this, you're going to die. So you cannot just change the formula. You have to keep the formula the same. So what do I really need to do? I need to add a 2 here. So if I'm going to add a 2 here, let's add another one of these. So blue is my oxygen, red is my hydrogen. Now, what have I changed everything over here? So now I can just multiply my coefficient by my subscript. So I have 4 hydrogens. 1, 2, 3, 4. And I have 2 oxygens. 1, 2. So 2 times 2 is 4. 2 times 1 is 2. Now let's look at the right side. What do I need to change over here? 2 oxygens and 2 oxygens. That one's good. Is this one good? No. How am I going to change it? I'm going to put a 2 in front. 2 times 2 is 4. Do my hydrogens check out? Yes, they do. So this is how you're going to balance your equations. Let's do one more for kicks and giggles. And then I'm going to let you go on your own to solving the rest of the equations on this sheet. As you solve them, I'm going to be watching you. So if you have questions, type it into the public chat part and I can stop the video and come back on and help you, or we will figure that out. So here we go. Third problem on your sheet. N2 plus H2 yields NH3. All right, so let's figure out what we have on this side of our equations. We have 2 nitrogens. We have 2 hydrogens. Over here, I have 1 nitrogen, and I have 3 hydrogen. So where should we probably start? Typically, you always want to start with your metals, and then you go to your nonmetals, and then you do oxygens and hydrogens last. So let's start with this compound. If I've got 3 over here, hydrogen, but I only have, and I got 2 nitrogen over here, I'm sorry, 1 nitrogen and 2 nitrogen over here, how am I going to start with my nitrogen? So I'm going to put a 2 up front. Oh, I forgot to put out the M&Ms for my visual learners. So here we have 1. And H3. There's our start. Here's our 2 hydrogen. Okay, now there you go. You can see that those are definitely not balanced. So let's try this with changing this to 2 of these. All right, so now let's look over. How many do I have on this side? How many orange ones do I have? I have 2. 2 times 1 is 2. How many hydrogens do I have? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 6. 2 times 3 is 6. Let's come back over to this side. Are my nitrogens good? Why, yes, they are. 2 and 2. Are my hydrogens good? No, they are not. How am I going to get this to 6? What times 2 equals 6? 3 times 2. So now that is 6, and everything balances. All right, I hope that helps. Go ahead and finish this worksheet and we'll talk about it in a few minutes.